Welcome to the Contrarians, where we are right and you are wrong. I'm Julio.
And I'm Alex. Here on the show, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. For the first half of each episode, Contrarians Corner, we trash the fresh red tomatoes and praise the rotten green splotches, making our case any way we can.
The aptly titled Real Talk serves as the second half of each episode. This is where we discuss our true feelings on the movie we're covering. For more information on our podcast and to browse past episodes, you can head over to our website, wearethecontrarians.com.
From there, you can also access our Patreon and merchandise, because capitalism.
If you enjoy our attempts at comedic film discussions, we encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you use.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, that's what social media is for. You can find us on most platforms as @ContrarianPrime.
You can also see what we look like if you go to youtube.com/@ContrarianPrime, and you can contact us by email at wearethecontrarians@gmail.com.
I think that covers it.
Then it's time for the podcast. And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Muriel's Wedding. Or is it Mariel's Wedding, Alex?
When she actually gets married, it's Mariel, right?
Well, when the title says, like, the little title card, it was like, in Beetlejuice, how the movie title says Beetlejuice, but then when he spells his name in the movie is Betelgeuse.
Betelgeuse, yeah. Okay, well, whatever the case, Mariel, hello, we are the Contrarians, and welcome back. We're right, you're wrong. You know the deal at this point. If you don't, welcome for the first time. If you're a big Toni Collette fan, and this is the one that drew you in. Not Hereditary, not Sixth Sense, not Little Miss Sunshine, and isn't there one other one, Julio?
Yes. Hang on. We just did this for Hereditary. Sixth Sense, Little Miss Sunshine, Hereditary, Knives Out.
Okay, that's a ensemble.
She's a big part of it.
Yeah, but I don't think you can call that like a Toni Collette movie, would you?
Okay, you would call The Sixth Sense a Toni Collette movie?
She got nominated for an Oscar for it.
Okay, well.
There's three main actors in that, and she's one of them.
She didn't get nominated for Little Miss Sunshine.
She got a Golden Globe, I think. And,
doesn't count.
You buy those. So anyway, maybe the most of any actor we have not dedicated a series to, Toni Collette returns to the Contrarians for Muriel's Wedding, her feature debut, and her leading debut, I should say. She had one other film credit prior to this and a short film, but this is leading lady Toni Collette's debut all the way back in 1994. We're going to be talking about Toni Collette a lot, but Julio, she is not the reason for this season, so to speak. Your brainchild of our summer project here. Bogdana nights and PJ parties, is that it?
Bogdana films and PJ parties.
Okay.
I really like Bogdana nights, though.
So tell us what brought us to the table for this, Julio.
What brought us to the table? Some people call PJ Hogan the Australian Peter Bogdanovich. That's not true. But wouldn't it be awesome if they did?
You should have just ran with it and said that.
No. Peter Bogdanovich and PJ Hogan, I don't know. I mean, it would be amazing if by the end of the summer we've managed to draw parallels between their careers and the themes that they explore in their movies. But as it is, it's not necessarily that it was random. It was more of we needed a summer event. After watching Paper Moon, I really wanted to watch more Peter Bogdanovich movies. Off
to a hell of a start with that.
Yeah. But I was like, a whole summer of Bogdanovich? Can we do that? Because he's more of an artsy director. I was like, it would be nice to kind of put some more mainstream stuff out there. And we had a friend visiting us for a few weeks, and she showed us, she insisted we watch her favorite movie, which we, the Contrarians, will be covering later this summer. And it was a PJ Hogan movie, which reminded me of PJ Hogan. I was like, oh, that's right. How many movies has this guy made? Because I knew of a couple. And so I looked it up, and he is definitely more mainstream than Bogdanovich. So he seemed, that it just came together. I was like, all right, well, what if we watch the movies that this guy has made, to serve as breaks in between the more artsy fare from Bogdanovich. And that's not to say that PJ Hogan is not an artsy filmmaker. Definitely with this entry, this is, I would think, more of an indie Australian movie. Now, as we go through the summer, we'll see that he started getting bigger budgets and bigger stars. But then also, like Peter Bogdanovich, and also I think like most directors, most filmmakers, he had his ups and downs as far as reception and box office success. So it just seemed like a fun thing, We do Last Picture Show, then we do Muriel's Wedding, then we do some other more obscure Bogdanovich movie, then we do My Best Friend's Wedding. It just seems like it would be a nice contrast. But like I said, maybe not, Alex. Maybe we'll surprise ourselves. Maybe it'll turn out that My Best Friend's Wedding is PJ Hogan's Last Picture Show, and that would be amazing.
Man, that'd be a hell of a statement.
Not discounting it yet. The bottom line is we have two filmmakers, and we're going to explore most of their movies. I think in PJ Hogan's case, we're going to end up watching all of them. So that's pretty exciting. Whenever we can have a big dose of, we can tackle like a big chunk of someone's filmography, whether they're actors or filmmakers, that's always interesting because we get to see their evolution, their devolution sometimes. It's gonna be cool. Here we're pretty much at the beginning, right? It's not just Toni Collette that was starting. I mean, this is, if I remember correctly, this is Hogan's first feature, right? He has a short before this, maybe, or a TV movie.
He had a short film and then the Humpty Dumpty Man, which was an Australian TV film directed by PJ Hogan. And he wrote To Make a Killing, which was a thriller in Australia, 1988. So several years before this. But you are correct. A short film, a made-for-TV film, but this is the first big cheese. And it's the one he did before My Best Friend's Wedding, which will, as mentioned, come back up eventually. So this was a first-time affair for many involved. At least the two titans of this project. Yep.
And I think it's also worth mentioning, Alex, that this is our return to Australian cinema. We took a break from it.
Oh, yes.
But once upon a time in this podcast history, we were getting Australian picks left and right here on the Patreon feed. I think that we kind of came to terms with our acceptance of, some stuff that worked, some stuff that didn't work for us, like how Australian was too Australian. So I think that some of the discussion about this movie is going to probably revolve around how much we can get not being Australians ourselves.
I know I'm not normal, but I'm trying to change. I'm trying to become more like you, more of a...
It's too late.
I can change.
You'll still be you.
Well, that's PJ Hogan, and then our leading lady, Toni Collette, returning to the Contrarians. This is, as I mentioned, her leading debut. She had one other film credit, a feature film by the name of Spotswood, which was a 1991 Australian business comedy drama directed by Mark Joffe. Anthony Hopkins. We got some Russell Crowe in there. We have our good friend Ben Mendelsohn as well, of Australian cinema fame.
Man, Australian All-Stars.
No joke.
The Australian Avengers.
And then she did This Marching Girl Thing, which was a short film, and 1984, September of 94 to be specific, she was Muriel in Muriel's Wedding.
Now, Alex, I want to clarify this. Just because when I was doing the pitch, whenever we were talking about this last recording, I said Paul Hogan's Muriel Wedding. And I mean, that's not entirely wrong. PJ Hogan, I mean, his full name is Paul John Hogan, but he's not Paul Hogan, like Crocodile Dundee.
Crocodile Dundee? Yeah.
Yeah, no. Two different people. I have heard that Paul Hogan is very difficult to work with. And PJ Hogan, as far as I can tell, is a pretty nice guy. So don't get them confused.
That's why they separated it.
Yes.
81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Certified fresh based on 48 reviews with an 84% audience score. And that's comprised of over 50,000 submissions. Critical consensus, heartfelt and quirky, though at times broad. Muriel's Wedding mixes awkward comedy, oddball Australian characters, and nostalgia-heavy soundtrack. Julio, what critical quotes did you pull for us?
Here's a handful of fresh tomatoes from the Rotten Tomatoes website. I'm going to start with Caffeinated Clint from Movie Hole, who says, one of the finest Australian films of all time. The laughs don't stop. I think we've had this point made before, Alex, or at least
they don't even go to the ABBA.
Yes. Man, Muriel at the Yabba. Can you imagine?
Loomis just with the coins on his eyes.
I think she would find it incredibly entertaining.
He would tell her discontents the luxury of the well-to-do, and she would just start laughing in his face.
But what I was going to say is I think that at some point with another movie, we've ran into this sort of statement. And I don't know, maybe Caffeinated Clint is Australian, in which case I think it's okay for him to proclaim that this is the finest Australian film of all time. But if he is not Australian, I think he's out of line here.
Who are you to say, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, if you're making that kind of statement, you have to limit yourself to your country, right? It's already pretty pretentious to say this is the greatest American film of all time. I can maybe get away with saying, oh, this is the greatest Peruvian film of all time. But I wouldn't feel comfortable saying this is the greatest, I don't know, British movie of all time. That's too much. Who is this guy? His website is Movie Hole.
There was a match on this AEW pay-per-view last weekend that Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, who are like arguably the premier wrestling journalists of right now, immediately proclaimed to be the greatest match that ever happened in the United States. And I was just like, fuck off, dude. Like they're qualified to say because they live here. But I'm telling you right now, no matter what country you live in, if you say it's the best thing that the country's ever produced, most people are immediately going to roll their eyes and not believe you. So you're best served just saying, hey, it's good.
I would love to be proven wrong. I would love Caffeinated Clint to come back with just his thesis and go, look, I watched this many Australian movies. I've done the work. You guys could barely get through Undead.
Personally, having watched Chopper, this thing had quite a hill to climb. I'll tell you that right now.
All right, next, Neil Gillette from The Age, Australia. Hogan directs in a bright, sketchy, almost comic strip style. Yet his outstanding achievement, the quality that sets Muriel's Wedding apart from the current crop of Australian comedies, is his use of tragic incidents to darken the lightness.
Mm.
Alex, have you ever found yourself watching a comedy, having a good time, and then thinking, you know what this needs? Some tragedy. That's why I watch a comedy.
No, if I wanted that, I'd watch The English Patient.
You ever watch The English Patient and find yourself thinking, you know what this needs?
A pratfall of sorts.
Yes, hilarious nudity. Next, Nick Levine from NME, New Musical Express, says, it's an incredibly poignant film, both sweet and salty, with an excellent soundtrack. If you like ABBA, I guess.
Yeah, what soundtrack besides ABBA's in this thing? Come on now.
I mean, that's all there is. When we watched and covered Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, another Australian beloved classic. I mean, ABBA made an appearance, but ABBA didn't take over the soundtrack. In this case, ABBA ruled supreme. And I think that maybe the movie could have benefited from a little more variety. Didn't you feel like ABBA started to wear thin?
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I understand this came out in 1994, but Julio, you and myself were watching this in 2024, and we lived through Mamma Mia.
Yes.
It accompanied The Dark Knight into the hearts of the world on July 18th of 2008, I believe. If I know that date correctly off the top of my head, I'm disappointed in myself. But we've lived through it. We've lived through the Abbasance of sorts, and so there's no novelty to it here. You know what I mean?
In fact, it's a step back because once you've heard Pierce Brosnan sing ABBA, just to hear ABBA sing ABBA is not the same. Just like, it's missing a little something.
As Newfound Glory would say, it's all downhill from here.
Yes. And we're going to close with Robert Roten from Laramie Moviescope, who says, it stars the somewhat homely Toni Collette as Muriel, whose whole purpose in life is to get married. How she does that and what happens after that are a couple of the many delightful surprises in this film. The biggest surprise here is that this dude, yes, would call Toni Collette homely. Not only is he kind of that's uncalled for just to begin with, but also way wrong. This is Toni Collette is gorgeous in this movie. I mean, she always is, but
yeah,
it's one of the things that doesn't work in the movie.
She's 21 and pretty and ready to conquer the world. Homely is a very odd way of wording it.
I think that he got his words mixed up. I understand that the movie wants us to perceive her as homely, right? Oh, this poor girl, she's not even a good looking, and that's why she can't succeed in love or even friendship. But I mean, I'm sorry, then you shouldn't have cast Toni Collette because it just doesn't work. All right, Alex, those are the quotes. Let's dive into this wedding party.
I've been waiting 25 years for this moment.
I'm sorry, sir. I must have taped over that.
Muriel's wedding. Socially awkward and young Muriel Heslop is the target of ridicule by her shallow and egotistical friends Tanya, Cheryl, Janine, and Nicole. She spends her time listening to ABBA songs and daydreaming of a glamorous wedding to get her away from the dead-end beach town of Porpoise Spit and Bill, her domineering father and corrupt politician who constantly belittles his whole family. Muriel attends the wedding of Tanya and is it Chalk or Chook? How are they saying this dude's name? Chook. Okay. During which she sees him and Nicole secretly having sex. Wedding guest Diane, a department store detective, calls the police on Muriel for stealing the dress she is wearing, and they publicly escort Muriel out of the reception. So, as countless movies of the 90s did, this begins with a bouquet being thrown at a wedding. We're introduced to Toni Collette, speaking her native tongue here, Australian. She's not forced to cover it up.
It's jarring.
It is. It is. We're used to Little Miss Sunshine, like we mentioned, Sixth Sense, and for better or for much worse, Hereditary. We're used to. So, Julio, again, we're trying our best here, but it's 30 years later, and these tried out tropes of like the girls fighting to catch the bouquet at a wedding, and just like the kickoff here, it starts. And, you know, you're kind of rolling your eyes, and then she stole a dress and she's catching her friend's husband now cheating on her with another one of her friends. And you can't get a grip on this at all here.
Yeah, it's a collection of wedding tropes and an attempt, I guess, at giving us a quirky protagonist. It's tough. Okay, let's start with the part that's not the movie's fault. It's not the movie's fault that Toni Collette would go on to become a superstar, well known for playing really complex, really strong characters, right? So
fair. It's
really tough to buy her as this woman that is kind of lost and that is bullied by these other women. I mean, I know that this is just a snapshot of a very small part of Australia, but if this movie is to be believed, women are nasty in Australia as far as just hateful.
Oh, this movie definitely has the all women hate each other thing going on.
Yes, it's brutal and it's uncomfortable to watch. And maybe it's because, you know, we're men. Maybe if you're a woman watching, you're like, no, that's just how it is. They're just playing. But they're really mean to her. And the entire time I'm thinking, well, you're Toni Collette. You can just motherfuck them. Just go like, I am your mother. So that's you know, a problem just to begin with. Problem number two is just that this doesn't paint Australia as a very nice place. Just going by how everybody treats Toni Collette and also just how Toni Collette is to begin with. Like, did you have a problem with how much she put up with in this movie? Like from the beginning, like her family treats her like shit, her friends treat her like shit.
Yeah, I mean, I started to, but then within the first act of the movie, she steals her family's entire savings. So I was like, oh, she was keeping tabs on all this shit. So, you know, I don't need to feel too bad about what's going on here.
She's just as bad as they are.
Exactly.
Is the worst person at that party the lady that calls the cops on her?
Yes. As opposed to just like having an aside discussion with her. She humiliates her in front of everybody. That woman just seems nasty.
I mean, she shows up later and does the same thing.
Oh, yeah. She gets the mom later in the movie. But yeah, my notes here, it's just commenting on how young Toni Collette is in this. She literally looks like a 21-year-old, which she was. And her friends are just so unrelentingly mean. Definitely before we figured out how to work that gimmick into, Mean Girls. It would be 10 years later when we got Mean Girls. And here you kind of have the foundation of that, but it's just overkill. They're like comically mean to her.
Yeah, there's no sympathetic sides to them. They're just mean, and that's it. Like, you're right, Mean Girls is a great example of how eventually filmmakers figure out how to do it, right? Regina George is a pretty terrible person, but she does have some redemptive qualities, and by the end of the movie, you're like, oh, good for her. By the end of Muriel's Wedding, you're wishing ill on every single person on screen. There's
Accurate.
very little that these people do that make them feel like they have layers. It's just like, no, they're evil and that's it.
Soon after, Bill's rumored mistress, Deidre Chambers, recruits Muriel into her multi-level marketing business, and Muriel's, quote, friends officially kick her out of the group after clarifying she is not invited on a island holiday. Muriel's mother, Betty, signs a blank check for Muriel to buy products for the cosmetics business, but she instead uses it to withdraw $12,000 to follow them to the island anyway. This is when she gets the blank check. She has the "I'll show them all," the villain origin line there.
So it's in the 90s, they didn't have an alert. Like if there's like a sudden large withdrawal from your bank account, they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine.
I kept trying to remind myself this is 30 years ago, but like, man, a family of 5 or 6 having only 12 grand to fall back on. That's pretty rough. And you're a politician, man. You're not doing your job as a crooked politician if all you have is 12 grand to fall back on.
It's not even like he was a nice human being. Like, he's a crooked human being, and yet he couldn't embezzle.
Exactly.
Alex, did you feel either excitement or dread at the possibility that this could take on the plot of Sex and the City, the movie?
I've kind of blocked that from my mind like a trauma survivor, so you're going to have to explain to me what you mean by that.
Because they go on this holiday so that whoever the name of the one that got married, the friend that got married, so she can get over her husband cheating on her. She found out that he cheated on her, although she doesn't know he cheated on her with her friend, with one of the bridesmaids. And then the other friends go like, well, let's just go on your honeymoon by ourselves, which is what happens with Sarah Jessica Parker and Big, right?
I think so. I've seen that movie one time, so again, I'm
How
not.
is it that I know the plot of the Sex and the City movie better than you do?
I know the show a lot better than you do. So,
well, it's exactly that, except that they never got married. Like, Big left her before they got married, so then her friends convinced Sarah Jessica Parker to just, well, she already has paid for the honeymoon, so let's go to the honeymoon, and then a big chunk of the movie happens there. Here, we don't spend as much time on this trip as in Sex and the City, but at first I thought, okay, well, it's a decent setup for shenanigans, right? Like a honeymoon that's not a honeymoon anymore, but instead it's a girls' night out, or several girls' night outs.
Hey, remember Tanya Degano? She got married to Chook. To what? Chook, Peter Vernell.
Oh, I remember them. What a pair of assholes.
there Muriel runs into Rhonda Eppenstall. This is played by Rachel Griffiths.
6 Feet Under's Rachel Griffiths.
Okay, thank you. I was curious if you knew her from anything, because I did not. But she's an old high school acquaintance. They quickly strike up a friendship, cemented when Rhonda gleefully tells Tanya about Nicole and Chook. She walks up and they act like they're going to be buddy-buddy to her. She's like, well, Muriel told me she saw your husband fucking Tanya there. And, which does lead to a really funny reveal in the next scene that it's not like drawn attention to. You just kind of have to watch for it, that Tanya has a black eye. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that's the last we see of Tanya. I guess she got kicked out of the group permanently after that.
And if you were wanting some more ABBA, we get a performance of Waterloo here by Rhonda and Muriel.
It's a full song, right? They do beginning to end.
It's a full musical number. They do like the music video and all that shit, man.
Oh, is that why they break the fourth wall? Is that from the music video?
Yeah, that's like a classic ABBA thing. You mean when they're looking at the camera, like over each other's faces and shit?
Yeah. See, I don't think I've ever seen an OG ABBA video, but I remember, maybe you do too. This is MTV stuff. When were they the 18s? These 4 teenagers or young adults that covered ABBA songs.
The what?
18s. A-Teens. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Oh, ABBA Teens.
Yeah, I'm out on that one. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Well, their music videos were very much like what we see here with the looking at the camera and being weird.
Yeah, but that's an ABBA move, full stop. So they definitely knew what they were doing, playing to their market here.
A-Teens are a Swedish pop music group from Stockholm. The group was formed by Nicholas Berg in 1998 as an ABBA tribute group called ABBA Teens, which was later renamed A-Teens. The group is best known for the singles Mamma Mia, 1999, and Upside Down, 2000, both of which were hits worldwide. Where the hell was Alex Maddis in 99 and 2000 that he didn't see these kids rising to fame?
I guess I missed out on that one. I'm sorry.
Well, better than what Rachel Griffiths and Toni Collette do here. Like, I was okay with 10, 15 seconds of them putting on a song and dance number, but the whole song is just too much. Like, you can see that the movie's trying to fill up the time with like other things happening because it keeps cutting back to Nicole's stable and they're fighting.
It does have like a tissue paper thin premise that they're just trying to stretch the most out of.
Yeah. So Rachel Griffiths, Alex, thoughts? Because I know her, like I said, from 6 Feet Under. She plays one of the most frustrating characters. She's a very smart woman, but she's also, I would call her, I mean, she's very sexually active and has trouble being monogamous, and that causes her to cheat through the entire second season of the movie, and it is, I found it very exasperating. But still, like, it's a very complex character and very dark, right? And then here she comes in and she's almost like a ray of sunshine because she seems to be the only person that treats Muriel like a human being. So, of course, the movie is going to do her dirty later on. But when she first showed up here, what were your thoughts?
Dramatically. Yeah, my first thought was like, oh, it's Australian Juliette Lewis.
Yes. Well known from the Australian remake of Natural Born Killers.
I knew that Muriel's lies were going to just spin into a web out of control, and they kind of do, but she doesn't suffer too many consequences from just making up torrid lies about, fiancés that don't exist and just making up people in general. So I was kind of, this whole first interaction, like, I figured it was going to be this thing of they become really close friends and Rhonda eventually feels like her trust has been betrayed, and that does happen, but in a way that you could not forecast just from this initial reaction.
Yeah, I think that when their friendship finally breaks, it has very little to do with the lies and a lot more to do with some really shitty actions that Muriel takes. Yeah, I think that my biggest issue with Rhonda is that she seems pretty smart, very street smart in a way that Muriel isn't. And that's, I guess, why you would think that the friendship in a way would work, right? Oh, she's going to just martin her up. She's going to teach Muriel the ways of, how do you survive so you're not relying on your family. But then for all her street smarts, she still falls for Muriel's lies. And that's the part that seems a little weird, right? Like, do you really buy all the things that Muriel is telling you, like this imaginary fiance that there's no proof, and then later she says that she broke up with him, but he's an ex-cop, so he's always following her. It's just so weird. I just wish that they had committed to making that character smart. She's just smart, and if she could just say, look, I know you're lying, but I don't care because I think you're funny. At least you're more, even with your lies, you're more sincere than all these other women surrounding us. Well, that would have been a lot more believable and even a lot more respectable. But instead, it's like, oh no, she's smart, but she's also really dumb. That's the Rhonda character. So I didn't like it.
Are you on the run from the law?
I don't care if you are. I'd just like to know.
Returning home, Muriel is confronted by Betty regarding the stolen money. She immediately runs away to Sydney, sharing a flat with Rhonda and changing her name to Mariel. She gets a job at a video store, God bless, meets and briefly dates an awkward but kind man, Bryce Nobes. One night, Rhonda suddenly falls down, unable to feel her legs. This, if it seems kind of out of nowhere, it comes at you even harder in the movie in terms of a hard left.
Yep.
While at the hospital, Muriel calls home and learns her father is being investigated for taking bribes. Rhonda has a cancerous tumor in her spine and undergoes multiple operations, eventually leaving her a paraplegic. Muriel promises Rhonda to look after her and never let her go back to Porpoise Spit. She also uses Rhonda's health crisis to obtain pampered service at numerous bridal shops, trying on wedding dresses and taking photographs to indulge her wedding obsession. When Rhonda confronts Muriel, she finally confesses to her fixation on a storybook wedding, and their relationship becomes strained. I mean, this isn't here in the movie this becomes evident. This is from literally the jump, the beginning. It's that dangerous 80s, 90s, early 90s. This was absolved to a certain degree and kind of flipped on its head in the mid to late 90s. But this idea that all women can do to make themselves happy is, find a man and get married. That seems to be the basis for 98% of this movie. She eventually learns in the end, but this whole movie is just driven by her wanting a big wedding. And that's, through 2024 lenses, almost comical. If you tried to proffer something like this to the movie going public now, they'd reject it wholeheartedly, don't you think?
They wouldn't believe that Muriel is a real person. I could hardly believe it myself. Like, what?
She was a manic pixie dream girl kind of before that existed.
Yeah.
And by manic pixie dream girl, I mean one that steals all her family's money and moves across the country and just changes her name.
Manic pixie dream bride. That's it. Because she's just zeroed in on marrying someone, anyone, doesn't matter who.
It is hilarious when she calls back home when her friends in the hospital are like, the house is being raided. The government's here. And she's like, I got to go.
I mean, this movie is pretty cruel to some of its most vulnerable characters, right? Specifically, Rhonda and Muriel's mom. And I wish that I'd been able to enjoy the fact that the dad was being investigated for taking bribes and for being corrupt. But the problem is that the movie frames it in a way where the mom is also paying the consequences of that. And that's not fun anymore. Right. But of course, it's the same movie where, as you just said, Rhonda gets a tumor in her spine and eventually, she can't walk. And then eventually they have to amputate. So she can't walk ever. It's weird on two accounts. One, that for whatever flaws it had, we were just having fun. This was just a silly movie about a young woman obsessed with weddings that steals money from her asshole dad and then tries to rediscover friendship with an old friend. I mean, that's kind of, she's working at a video store and Rhonda's across the street at a dry cleaners and they talk about boys, and that's one movie. And then poor Rachel Griffiths is just pushed into this different movie, just this dark tale of this woman that apparently is just castigated by the movie for just being the fun character, right? She's promiscuous and she's just out there partying, having fun with two dudes at the same time. Oh, nope, that's it. I'm sorry. That's not allowed. Instead, you're going to be sick and now you're going to be somewhat bullied and looked down on the way that Muriel was. And it just feels weird that you would go to such lengths to mistreat the one of the few characters that are really sympathetic in the movie.
Yeah, and this is, of course, all accompanied by more ABBA. And there's this scene before Rhonda falls ill where Bryce is attempting to have sex with Muriel and confuses the zipper on this beanbag chair for the zipper on her pants. And beanbag filling flies everywhere. They fly through a window, and the pet bird they have flies off. It's all very chaotic and would be kind of fun in a silly 90s sense if it wasn't for, like you said, the weird feeling of punishment that the one character that so far has been a positive influence in Muriel's life gets.
Yeah, is this guy that's trying to have sex with Toni Collette? Is he Australian Frankie Muniz?
I don't know about that. Frankie Muniz in my head is always a kid, so that's kind of weird.
Well, he grew up and he developed an Australian accent, Alex. And then I guess traveled back in time.
I don't even know if Frankie Muniz was born when this movie came out.
Frankie Muniz's Australian relative.
Yeah, I don't know about that. You might be on your own with that one. Matt Day is his name. I'm looking at a picture of him right now from 2012. Man, good looking chap. looking like
Agent Cody Banks.
No, definitely not. He definitely did not grow up to look like Frankie Muniz. He looks like Hugh Jackman's younger brother, kind of.
Oh man, that's on the other side of the spectrum.
Did you notice that when she finds the wedding dress and she's going through the store, there's like an orchestral version of Dancing Queen?
Yes.
Because they thought so little. PJ Hogan thought so little of his audience to understand like overtures and shit that it's just like, all right, we're just going to play Dancing Queen anytime something important happens in this movie.
There's a Dancing Queen plays at least 3 times in this movie, and Fernando probably just as many. And they also show up in the end credits. This bit where she is just going around wedding shops, pretending to be a bride and making up stories and getting pictures taken. This is psychotic, right? Like, it's not just me. This is not.
Oh, yes.
I mean, she's completely divorced from reality. She's gone from like one little lie to now just she's living in a fantasy land. I mean, this is our protagonist. We're following this person. And what were you rooting for? Were you rooting for her to be exposed? Were you rooting for her to get away with it? I don't even know what the end game is.
I didn't understand what was happening. I was just, I know literally what was happening, but I was like, what is the purpose here? What are we doing?
Right. I mean, is she going to buy one of the dresses?
My thought is like, she has no prospects that she's going to marry, and eventually someone's going to figure this out. And more so, these women work on commission. They're not just going to keep letting her come into the store and try shit on.
So could you tell at this point in the movie that the one thing that PJ Hogan was setting up was that Muriel was going to become even a worse person now and betray Rhonda?
I don't know if I saw that coming. No.
Man, I felt it in my bones. There was something in the way she reacted to Rhonda saying, no, I told my mom I'm going to stay here.
They're going to cut my spinal cord, Mario. Mum called. She wants to take me back to Porpoise Spit. I told her I was going to stay here with you.
Muriel's face was like, wait. She just seems so shallow. And I think that that's the problem. Look, I think that this movie can be commended on having the balls to have a protagonist that is so flawed and so makes so many bad decisions and harms so many innocent people in her wake. But I think you kind of have to be aware that when you do this kind of stuff, then more than likely you're not going to be able to give them any sort of a turn at the end where they become likable. And that's not what happens in this movie. So I think that this is the moment that she harms Rhonda. That's where she just completely breaks from the audience. And now you just don't like her. At least that was my experience. Mm-hmm. At what point did you turn on Muriel, or did you not turn on her at all?
It's not that I didn't turn on her. It was just the charm of her character wore off dramatically in the series of events that we're about to get to. Let's just get to it right now. Desperate, Muriel agrees to marry South African swimmer David Van Arkel so he can join Team Australia in the upcoming Olympics. She is paid $10,000 by David's parents for the help at Muriel's elaborate wedding in Sydney. Tanya, Cheryl, and Janine are all bridesmaids. Bitter Rhonda refuses to be one. Exactly. They were unbelievably awful to her, and she just welcomes them back with open arms, I guess, to just show, look at me, and she has her nice dress, and she has her fairy tale wedding, and the storybook ending that she wanted, so to speak. But to set this up, she literally just answers an ad in a paper, will buy bride. She shows up and she's doing all the Muriel like goofy laughing and kind of aloofness, and it's like, this isn't charming anymore. She's literally just marrying this guy just to say she's married, and then the wedding comes and those women are back for no reason. And at this point, Rhonda's in a wheelchair and she's not going to walk again, and she's literally cast aside. They scoot her off to the side of the aisle and say, this way won't be in anyone's way. And it's the charm is gone. The bloom is significantly off the rose at this point. Yeah.
And then after it's off the rose, somebody, probably PJ Hogan, just walks by and stomps on it because Muriel's mom is late to the wedding because fucking asshole of her dad wouldn't even pay for a plane ticket. So she has to, I guess, take the bus or something. And so she's late. She's all the way in the back. And nobody even acknowledges her presence. Like she's there with a present, and you can just tell her heart breaks when Muriel walks by and doesn't even say hi.
Oh yeah, it's really sad.
It's just too much. It's just too mean-spirited towards characters that don't really deserve it. Like if you want to punish the bitchy bridesmaids, go for it, because that part is fun. Show me more black eyes on those girls, but not the characters that are not harming anyone. Now, this thought occurred to me, Alex, and I don't expect you to have the answer, so we'll rely on our Australian listeners, or maybe listeners from other countries that may have a similar term. I thought green card wedding. This is a green card marriage, because obviously he's marrying an Australian citizen so he can, I guess, stay in the country, this swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't call it a green card over there, do you? Like green cards are here in the States because you actually the residence card. So what do you call it? What is it called what's the slang for it in Australia?
That's a good question, Julio. As far as like the immigration policies and how it works in Australia specifically, because I know we do have some Australian listeners, what paperwork, what do you need? Can you explain to us logistically? It's just like it would work here if you marry into citizenship. That's a real thing. But what would be the proper paperwork? Why in this situation is David going to get booted? What would he have needed to stay? So our Australian listeners, chat us up on that.
More importantly, what color is the card? So do you call it like I don't know, a blue card marriage? A blue.
Yeah. Got to get the bluey to go down to the ABBA. Bill openly treats Deidre as his date, and Betty is late to the wedding as she is unable to afford a plane ticket. Muriel does not notice her at the wedding. It is fucking heartbreaking. Rhonda moves back in with her mother, unable to live in Sydney without help. After the wedding, David makes his disinterest in Muriel clear to her.
In what planet do you marry Toni Collette? Let's say that you're doing it for immigration reasons, but you married her, and she's going to be living with you, and you do what this guy does, which is like, by the way, this is my room and that's your room. Never. I don't buy it.
Exactly right. Even if it's an arranged situation, myself personally, I would at least try to get to know Toni Collette. Be like, you look like that and I look like this. Let's see what can come of this.
We're already here. By law, we're husband and wife.
This is where the big split with Rhonda happens, though. She offers with the money that she got from the wedding to buy Rhonda and her mother plane tickets back to Porpoise, and just going back on everything they agreed upon. And here, there's no sympathy for Muriel running off everyone in her life and being unhappy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially because so her moving out because she's marrying this guy means that Rhonda can't afford to live by herself in Sydney, so she has to move back with her mother. And to make things worse, because she's moving back to this little town that they come from, that means that the only people that she knows there that are going to be surrounding her are the horrible bridesmaids that we've been hating from the beginning of the movie. And it's almost like a horror movie where they're like, oh, don't worry, Rhonda, now we're going to be with you. We have no problem pushing you around or whatever. And then they grab the wheelchair and push her away. And it's that's all on Muriel. I mean, she could have prevented this. She could have said, look, we have an extra room here with this swimmer. You can move in with us. It's not like he cares. But no, instead, she thinks that she can just pay Rhonda off in a way by saying, look, I'll pay for your plane tickets. That's it.
Get some more ABBA thrown in here, by the way, at the wedding. Yeah, I do. How many I do's is there in that? It's the title of the song is I do. So we got 5 I do's.
It's what's that line in Reservoir Dogs? Tarantino's talking about like a virgin, and I think he's talking about dicks, and then somebody else goes like, how many dicks was that? That's a lot of dicks.
In Porpoise Spit, an increasingly distraught Betty intentionally shoplifts a pair of sandals she tries on, and Diane calls the police. This bitch is back. Bill arranges for the charges to disappear. Betty then pleads with Bill for help, only for Bill to announce his intentions to divorce her and marry Deidre. She is later found dead by her daughter, Joni. It is announced that Betty had a heart attack, but Joni reveals to Muriel that it was a suicide. At her mother's funeral, David comforts Muriel, and they finally consummate their marriage. So yeah, this is pretty fucking brutal. This scene here, Betty is clearly distressed. She admits that something's like wrong with her, and she needs help. She literally is crying for help from Bill, her estranged husband and the father of her children, and he turns her down flat and
Turns
sadly
her
ends
radio
up killing
on.
herself. Yeah, it's awful. This is a very bleak sequence in the movie. Very, very depressing, considering that a decent chunk of this movie is going for laughs. This whole sequence from Muriel's wedding to this point is pretty rough to get through.
Is he the worst character in the movie? Is he like I know that the friends are like pretty bitchy.
Yes,
but
because he is a grown-ass man that knows better. He's an evil politician, and he's doing these things. He knows the difference between right and wrong, whereas Muriel's still in her early 20s. Her friends are really fucking mean and vindictive, but again, they're still in their 20s. They're young. They're still growing up to be done from them. Bill is easily the worst. He is the villain of this movie. And I almost turned on the movie completely when it seemed like Muriel was going to make nice with him, and she told him like, no, fuck you, this is your mess to clean up.
Yeah, and even then, I think that the movie tries to paint him in a slightly sympathetic light towards the end, as in like, oh well, he's grown as a person because he's letting Muriel go. But I don't buy it, and even if that's the case, I don't care. This guy, if anybody needed to be punished in this movie that loves punishing the good people, they really pull their punches when it comes to how the story is going to end regarding this guy. Like, Bill deserved to lose his shirt with this investigation, and instead it's the opposite, because Betty's death, like the death of his wife or his ex-wife maybe, turns him apparently into a sympathetic character, so the investigation is pulled back, and so it was just so dissatisfying that how that character's journey ended, because I really was looking forward to getting some sort of revenge, at least, even if the mom had already died, get some sort of comeuppance for this guy. It doesn't really happen.
I was nearly in state government. 14 votes I needed. Nobody knew who'd won for 3 days till the postal vote came in. 3 days I was almost there.
It is brutal also that she doesn't get, like, the mom doesn't get any sort of, it's not like, okay, well, she passed away, but at least we're going to celebrate her life or anything. She passes away, and then, yeah, you can see that her kids are kind of sad, but for the most part, they just seem to be confused. Like, nobody really steps up to say like, oh, she was good. Instead, they keep talking about how she burned the yard because she got tired of one of the kids not mowing it. And it was like, all right, yeah, that's quirky, but how about some sort of celebration of her life, so that we show that, so the movie tells me that they know what this character meant, that she was actually an innocent victim. But there's too much ABBA and not enough of that.
There's certainly a whole lot of ABBA.
ABBA and the Yabba.
Muriel does have the self-reflecting moment where she tells her sister that she always thought she was like her mom, but she's worried she's more like her dad, like runs away from problems. And it's definitely the most self-aware moment in the film from the Muriel perspective.
What do you make of the fact that this swimmer guy that she married finally finds her attractive when she sees her crying and almost completely overcome with grief over the death of her mother? That's what got him turned on.
I don't fucking know. That he saw that she bleeds too, that she, is also broken, or because his thing is like, his parents want him to get the gold medal. So maybe he sees that she also has problems with her parents. I don't know. It's very fucking stupid. It reminded me of the scene in Blades of Glory when Jenna Fisher explains to John Heder about how her parents both died in a car wreck, and he takes that as the sign to go in for the kiss. That's very similar to what happens here.
Except that this is played straight.
Oh, yeah. This isn't played for laughs. This is played for like, aw. Her mother's death forces her to take a hard look at her life, and she tells David she can no longer remain married to him as neither of them are in love, and she wants to stop lying. Bill asks Muriel to help raise her siblings, as Deidre is less likely to marry him with children in tow. Tough fucking shit, man. He has also lost his job on city council. Muriel stands up to him, giving him $5,000 of her wedding money and telling him she will repay the rest of the stolen money once she gets a job in Sydney. Impressing her father with more of her assertive personality, Muriel demands that he stop his verbal abuse treatment of her siblings.
Here's a better idea. Don't give any money to this guy. Give the $5,000 to your siblings and tell them to just take off.
The verbally abusive father. Here you go. Here's $5,000 that you can hold over these kids' heads.
Yeah, exactly. And then he gives her the nod. Like, yeah, you done good, kid.
This doesn't redeem his character by any stretch, but he does have the moment where he acknowledges you reap what you sow. He said, "You'd think I'd know that growing up on the farm."
Question, Alex. What happens to the swimmer now? Does he get deported? Because they needed to be together for 4 months, and it hasn't been 4 months.
I don't know. Maybe they'll just like be separated, but still married by law. Because she tells him good luck in the games with the intention of, he's going to make it and get his gold medal. But I don't know. I didn't even think about that. I don't think they thought about it either. I don't think PJ Hogan thought about it when writing this movie.
He already, he's like 2 weeks after they finish shooting the movie, he wakes up in the middle of the night. Fuck.
Muriel goes to Rhonda's house where Muriel's former tormentors are visiting and offers to take her back to Sydney. Rhonda accepts and lets the other girls know what she thinks of them, much to their shock and anger. The best friends head to the airport, happily leaving Porpoise Spit behind for a more promising future. And you guessed it, Dancing Queen plays over this sequence and takes us into the credits.
Is this I thought of Elmo, but I'm assuming that they're referencing something else with the whole like goodbye store, goodbye mall.
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't know if they were specifically referencing anything. But yeah, that's what they do. They say goodbye to everything on their way out of town. And then they look at each other in synchronicity, go, "Goodbye, Porpoise Spit." And then the road sign says, "Now leaving Porpoise Spit, now entering the ABBA."
The sequel we never got, but the sequel we deserved.
Donald Pleasance still would have been kicking in 94 or 93 whenever this movie was made, so he could have made an appearance.
Yeah. They stop at the ABBA for a couple drinks. They put ABBA on the the bar. They just drop a
and they run out of town with like the getaway music blaring.
Oh, well, it was not to be. Final question, Alex. Did you, when, the movie's called Muriel's Wedding, and then Muriel's Wedding actually happens about, I don't know, an hour, 20 minutes.
It wraps up the second act of the movie.
Yes.
There's still like the whole last half hour to go.
Were you that Obama meme where he's just kind of like confused?
Yeah. The shrugging of the shoulders.
Yeah.
I actually checked the time when the wedding was happening in the movie. I was like, how much of this is left? But then I guess for the benefit of the movie, I was like, well, this is going to be a really stupid ending if she just fights to have a wedding that means absolutely nothing. And then I was like, oh, she learned more about herself in the process. I get it.
See, I would have just thought, man, it's got to be a really long wedding. 40 minutes to go.
It's the whole last act is just one continuous shot of the wedding.
Yeah, it's every 5 minutes somebody else pushes Rhonda further away
until she's completely out of frame.
All right, well, that was Muriel's Wedding. That was the Toni Collette, PJ Hogan debut, as far as we are concerned. So, Alex, are you ready for real talk?
Let's do it. Let's get the hell out of Porpoise Spit.